Helmet three to us. Good morning, Harry Aston.
Good morning.
I must tell everybody that Harry is a great renovator of castles, and I think you still live in one, do you not, Harry?
Well, I changed direction in life when I turned 50. I was By that time I was in the corporate world, and it was a very interesting life I was leading in Canada. But I had this sudden notion that I wanted to restore old castles, or at least start with an old castle in the center of France, which I did, a 13th, 15th century castle. And it inspired me to go on. And so I ended up doing 5 of them in the end and impoverishing myself in the process, but that's all right. I managed to persuade unsuspecting banks to lend me quite a significant amount of money, running into the millions. But I honored their trust by winning the French lotto. Lottery. And paying,
Wonderful.
and paying them back every penny. So I'm now poor again, surviving an old 90th year in France, in Normandy, in full retirement now, not doing a lot at all. But I did enjoy that castle restoring period, which took, how long did it take? Almost 30 years of my life. And it was very rewarding, and we got recognition, my wife and I, from the French government in terms of various awards, and we even have a street named after us in the Loire Valley.
Wow.
Not that I've ever seen it. I don't travel anymore.
Yeah.
I can barely walk across the room now, but it was a fun period of life restoring castles, and it was a total change from what I was doing before.
Well, we got that in common. I can barely walk across the room either, but the end for travel is still there.
Mm-hmm.
I spend at least 2 days a week with a little notebook trying to figure out how I can get halfway around the world.
Oh, really? That's interesting, because my daughter is planning to visit from Vancouver, Canada, which is our own hunting ground, is it not?
It is
And
indeed.
in the fall, to help me celebrate my 90th year, and she wants me to go to Britain, but I don't feel that I can make the trip really, because of my physical incapacities, and I can barely walk. But I have great, affection for Britain, and for its beauty and richness, its history, and its castles. And so I don't know, I could still be tempted to visit Britain. And of course, the part of Britain that particularly fascinates me at the moment is this Sussex area. East Sussex. I should certainly make a stop in Lewis if I get an opportunity to.
Well, of course, our castle here is one of the very first castles built by the Normans. That's why it's quite small.
Mm-hmm.
Although it did replace a Saxon castle, which is made out of wood. And of course, the Normans very much were into stone castles. But yes, I mean, as I say, you can't walk around Lewis without tripping over history.
Indeed. I've actually visited Lewis Castle years ago. Fascinating place, and well maintained, beautiful condition. It's
yes, and you know the train made all the difference to it. The train really saved Lewis Castle because it was falling into disrepair, and with the train, Lewis started to get day trippers from Brighton. The tourists in reverse, as it were, and they would come up here and water the streets and so on. And the people who were charged with looking after the castle at that time thought, well, I'll tell you what, let's charge them sixpence to walk around our ruined castle, which they did. And the money that generated started the program to put it back together into its present fine state, until such time as society decided, gosh, we've got to save these things. So it was the day tripper in the 1800s.
Yes, yes. Well, of course, the awareness of saving patrimony it came around in the early part to middle of the 1800s, and in France, Prosper Mérimée, who led the charge in the 1840s and established what became known as the Bâtiment de France, which is a historical government-run historical entity, which protects the French patrimony and has done an amazing job. But coming back to Lewis Castle, was it not built by the number 2, the deputy of William the Conqueror?
It was indeed.
Yes, I forget his name. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
De Warren.
Yes, and
Warenne, but nowadays I think his surviving relatives dropped the double NE. It's just Warren. Yeah.
That's right. There's a story told about Warren that because when shortly after the conquest of Britain, the conquest of England, I should say, William had to return to Normandy because the Duke of Brittany, a traditional enemy, was getting a bit stroppy, so he had to put him down and get him sorted out. So he left Warren in charge. And during William's absence, there was an attempted uprising against the new regime. And so Warren put it down with great brutality and cut off, I don't know, the right foot of several thousand wicked people, as he thought them. And when William came back and saw all these people hobbling around, he said, "What's all this about?" And he said, "Well, sire, I cut off the foot because they were disloyal." I said, "That's well done," and he gave him more lands. But he died without progeny, I believe. And
no, he had some. It was 2 more generations on that that ceased the line.
Mm-hmm.
He and Gudreda. In fact, I think she died in childbirth.
Okay, yeah.
She was a very pious lady, and she said to William, "Look, Bill, I think we should really go to Rome and thank the Pope for our victory and what we've got here. And we've got these vast areas of land, which they did have. They had half of England."
Mm-hmm.
And so they set off. And on the way, there was a brush fire wall somewhere in France, and they were prevented from getting to the Vatican. So they stayed at the Cluniac Monastery. Mm-hmm. And she was so impressed with it, she came back and she said, "Bill, I want to build one here." And he said, "Well, the boss, William the Second, I think, the Conqueror, isn't so keen." Mm-hmm. And she said, "Well, we're bloody related to him, and we sometimes go down for Sunday tea. Give me an opportunity to bend his ear." Mm-hmm. So off she went, had tea with him, and said, "Listen, I want to build this Cluniac monastery." And he sent a message back to her husband and said, "Look, keep this woman quiet. Let her build the damn thing."
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. And that's how she actually. I mean, very soon after the invasion in 1069 is the first recorded time that they started to build that. Mm-hmm. She started to build it, and it became one of the most famous monasteries in England and one of the wealthiest. And that's why Henry had it pulled down at the time of the dissolution of the monasteries. It was too powerful. Mm-hmm. So yes, Bill and his wife had quite an impact on Sussex at that time.
But am I right in saying that eventually the lands of Warren passed into the family of the Dukes of Arundel?
I think they did.
Yes, and eventually the Howard family, the Howards, who I've heard they built something like 30 castles in Britain. The Howard family over the years.
Oh, did they? I didn't know that.
They had an up and down career in politics. I think one fell foul of the king, was executed, and And of course, the Castle Howard in Yorkshire, where I come from, is a notable thing.
Yes. Well, one of the Howards wooed Elizabeth, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that whatever you did in that Tudor period, you had to be very, very, very careful, because one day you were a friend and the next day you weren't.
Oh, indeed.
And the family here in Lewis is a Catholic family, still a Roman Catholic family. And they managed to wend their way through all the kings and queens from about 1400 onwards, when they built their first manor house, and that is Lord Gage, who now has the tide village of Pearl.
Well, indeed, the Catholic heritage continues. I believe the Arundels, or at least the Howards, are the premier Catholic family in Britain. Is he not Chief Marshal of England? The Duke of,
Yeah.
yes, but they're Catholics. It's amazing. In a Protestant country, well, a country where the official religion is Protestant, and all other religions are recognized, of course. But the chief marshal is a Catholic. Yeah.
Yes. Apart from the castle in Arundel, which is very well preserved and very nice to visit, whether you actually go to the old Norman part or whether you go to the more modern Arran, it is a beautiful, beautiful castle. But
indeed, yeah.
Although, like most Norman castles, it dominates the town, the other dominating building is the Roman Catholic Cathedral.
Indeed, yeah.
And in fact, that family, the Norfolks, is a family that a man that was a friend of yours and mine, David Frost.
Oh, yeah. Well, am I right?
That family.
Am I right in thinking that at one time in the past, before the topography changed, ships could sail as far as Arundel?
Yes, they could.
Could come up the river and at the estuary, and it dried out or whatever happened. The land.
Of course, they could in Lewis as well. You could get upstream in Lewis. The thing, strangely enough, that ended Lewis as a port was that the barges brought up the clay to build the railway.
Okay.
And, once the railway got cracking, it stopped Lewis as a port, because everybody just put stuff on the train. It was much faster, quicker, and safer, actually. So that it managed to kill itself as a port by taking on the job of ferrying the clay.
Well, listening to your talk, Keith, convinces me that maybe I should make the effort to get across to my home in Maple
Very well from Harry, as you know.
And visit.
Yes, that you and I actually
visit some of those wonderful pubs.
Did a documentary on the first castle that you ever built, the 1300 young.
Yeah.
Where is that?
And visit some of those wonderful pubs you've got there.
Yeah. Where was the first castle that you built? Where is it located?
In Boesse, in the Boesse, Bouesse, the Chateau de Boesse in the Berry region, Berry, Berry, strange name for a French region. And it was built, in fact, by one of the chief lieutenants of William the Conqueror. And so quite a remarkable property. And the last one we did was the oldest castle in France, which is the oldest castle keep in France. It was built in 997 by Falconera, the Black Falcon, the son of Geoffrey Greymantle, who was a prodigious builder of castles. He built between 40 and 50 castles in the center of France, reaching right up to the Normandy border, in fact. And he died in 1040, and his legacy is quite amazing. Many of the great castles of France owe their origin to to him, Fulcanera, the Black Falcon, great name. He divorced his wife in a rather brutal fashion. He executed her on the steps of the cathedral. But anyway, that's more legal process followed through.
Yeah, you wouldn't get away with that today, would you?
Yes. Well, I mean, it's they do it in a more genteel fashion.
I think, Harry, that really we should try very hard, you and I, to raise some funds so that we could go to one of these castles or the town where they are sited and spend a weekend looking at your handiwork and drinking some very, very good French wine.
Yes. Well, it's all on the internet, in fact. You can look it up, Chateau de Boisse or Donjon de Montbazon, Montbazon, Montbazon. And just south of Tours, the major town in the Touraine region, and it's all on the internet, and strange stories of finding headless bodies and all that sort of stuff, and haunted castles. Oh yes, one of our.
I can see I'm going to have to put pressure on you to do a nice program about these castles because they are fascinating and really unknown in many respects. I mean, we tell stories about all sorts of castles, but mostly those in the UK. But some of them, of course, would have had the UK associations in the days before the conquest, because, well, and after the conquest, because you know, the Henrys, for instance, got themselves in dreadful trouble because they kept on sending money back to their relatives in Normandy.
Yes, indeed.
So there were strong relationships with the people here and the people there. We must think about this.
Oh, well, we should, because coming back to the idea of haunted castles, again, there's it's all on the internet. Look, haunted castles, Chateau de Boisse, and the rest of it. But it took me into a sphere of interest as well, which was the exploration of ghosts, the possibility of the existence of the paranormal. And I don't want to. I'm not some sort of a spaced out nutcase that think it's automatically believes in ghosts, but it did open my mind to the possibility that there are dimensions of existence which are not of which we're not aware. We think we live in 4 or 5 dimensions, well, 5 if you include time and the ability to think ahead, which many animals can't. But why shouldn't there be several other dimensions in which other existences have been established that we're unaware of, and they're unaware of us, and occasionally these dimensions touch, and that's when we have a peek into each other's worlds, and we see strange things, and it explains a lot of the phenomena that people have written about through history. But people are hesitant to explore that because they would then be seen as a bit freakish and you know.
Well, they already think I'm freakish, so I don't mind taking a look. Harry, off air, because we don't want to bore our viewers totally. Off air, I'm going to get you to send me a list of the castles that you have something to do with, you know a little bit about, and those that have ghosts. Because what I do now is I put these scenarios to AI, what they come back with. And if you put them to 2 or 3 different AIs and match up the results, you sometimes can get a very fascinating story. And if there was, I would actually get a script written, because you've still got a very, very powerful broadcasting voice. So we would do a program on these castles, but with you voicing it and appearing a little. It would be your program.
Well, we could do that. It would be fun, I'm sure. Just, my thoughts going back to that possibility. We have to imagine that because we think of the paranormal, because we think there could be different forms of life surrounding us, or people coming back from the past, it's in our minds, and therefore, if it's in our minds, to a degree, it exists. It's a dimension of our creative thought of what we imagine things to be, and that is a dimension, and that's, I think, to a degree, what I said earlier, what sets us apart from many other people in the animal kingdom. We're basically animals, but we're a more evolved form of life and animal life, that we call ourselves human, but we have developed capacities that allow the mind to imagine these things, and therefore, to a degree, they do become real. And you know, it's a belief in any religion. If you believe in the God, or if you believe in the principle, then it becomes real to you. And the legacy is, of course, that people then translate that or transform that into reality by building churches and synagogues and temples and doing everything from human sacrifices to other worship, forms of worship. So no, there's a world there that is worth exploring, and of course, the old adage is that any castle worth the name has to be haunted. So when it induces, I remember in one castle we had a room that would where people had experienced, different people from different parts of the world, and at least about 50 times. And surprisingly, the very first person who had an experience in that room was a High Court judge a Supreme Court judge from Australia, not the kind of guy that you'd expect to have some, weird imagination. And he came down to breakfast one morning, because we transformed that castle into a chateau hotel, which we ran for about 12 years. And he said, Mr. Addison, he said, I think you've got a presence in your room. And so I questioned him more, and he'd been pushed around in the room by some invisible presence. And then we had reports of that independently of people over the years. And we never told this story to anybody because we wanted to keep it quiet in case it was commercially damaging to our enterprise. We didn't want to scare people away. But many people told the same story. And one interesting story is, in that particular room, the walls were so thick. It was the keep of the castle. At some points, they were almost 5 meters thick. And we had hollowed out bathrooms in the wall, in the thickness of the wall. And the theory was that we'd liberated some spirit or some poor type who had been walled up in the past for whatever misdemeanor, and we'd liberated him, but his presence was still in the wall, and therefore he was still, he would get in the bath, apparently. And when people got into the bath, they felt somebody getting out of the bath. And the one interesting story was a lady who, wife of one gentleman who, when he got in the bath, felt this something or other get out of the bath, and she felt somebody get into bed with her a few moments later. We never inquired as to what sort of an experience we had. No doubt it was out of this world. Anyway, but some of the silly stories we can tell about castle restoration.
Well, Mirador Priory here is very well preserved.
Yeah.
And it was owned by, I think, the Sydneys, or they were great friends of Henry VIII and Elizabeth and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And then it became a priory with rather naughty monks who went and helped themselves to the young ladies of the village, and it was lock up your daughter's time. But that is supposed to have a ghost. And in talking to people, he was a bit of a naughty guy in his lifetime, and used to tweak the bottoms of the maids. And they say that you can be in a gallery and you can be on your own, and suddenly something tweaks your bottom.
Yes. Well, when you talk about the monasteries, that's another realm of amazing thing, because some of them were hotbeds of sex and all sorts of strange.
Oh, absolutely. And well, the Carmen of Urana was apparently a collection of naughty songs, which the students at these seminaries and so on used to sing about Rome and so on. The way that perhaps they do today about the Church of England and Canterbury.
Well, this is it, and at pain of offending, at risk of offending any Catholic listeners or viewers, we've got to go back to people like Alexander VI, the Borgia, member of the Borgia family, the last of the warrior popes, who allegedly sired 70 children in his during his during this lengthy period of celibacy.
Well, it's tempting to ask the Scottish question: what do you wear under your smock?
Yes, indeed. No, I mean, the only three things that motivate the world, as we've all known, and that it is money, sex, and beer.
When you get all three together, it's powerful.
And these are the structures. This is the structure on which the world is built. Which is sadly, it would seem that Britain is going into decline because they're closing all the pubs and they're disappearing. So the beer aspect is that people will have to concentrate more on, and the politicians are going to take all the money. So all we'll be left with is sex and precious little of that, it would seem, because the population is declining. Obviously, the rate of procreation in the Western world is not reaching even replacement levels now. So the world is.
Immigrants aren't fulfilling all the old style Brit customs and habits.
So the world is going to hell in a handbasket.
Absolutely.
But at least you've got a good brewery. You've got a good brewery in Lewis. Half is it in Lewis?
Brewery is very good. Yes. And I remember, and you will recall, a great publicist called Fred Hill.
Oh yes, yeah.
In Vancouver. I remember Fred telling me, look, what happens in Vancouver is you have a top-class nightclub called The Cave.
Oh, I remember The Cave, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that brings in all the top acts because of its contacts and so on, I suppose. But what it then does is it starts a next level, such as the Marco Polo, Izzy's, and so on, names which will be familiar to you. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, there's a third level. And as long as you've got something at the top, you get those levels growing up beneath. And I think the same principle applies.
Yeah. Yes,
right, we better turn our attention to what's going on today. Now, you talk about the pubs. I didn't catch the whole force of it because even though I was up at 6, I was doing other things than watching television very closely. But I understand that the new government has made it easier for pub landlords to make a living because they were having the lifeblood drained out of them by their landlords. So what the details are, I don't know. But what do you make of our new Prime Minister so far?
Well, dealing with that first question about the pubs, I believe it's reduced the business tax on pubs by 20%, which is, of course, a very good move because they're being hit pretty hard by all sorts of other taxes and impositions and rules and regulations. With the result, we're losing, I think, I mean, I've been gone from Britain for 60 years, but losing at 2 pubs a day, is it, or something silly like that?
It's a rapid decline. Yeah.
Tremendous amount. Because I remember when, back in the 60s, I remember a figure, there were 88,000 pubs in Britain, and I think now there are probably less than half that, I'm not sure. And so, yes, there has been onslaught on the pubs, which is a great shame because it's the community centre of village life in many ways, and not just a place to go and drink. I know people go there and get hammered and misbehave themselves, but essentially it brings people together. And it also leads to a very even and level, equal society, because you get the postman drinking next to the local aristocrats and that sort of thing. People meet each other, different levels of life come together, which they don't in other European countries, I find. So the pub is an essential piece of social fabric, which is a tremendous shame to go. So if Andy Burnham is, doing something to try and help them, I think it's hopefully more than just a political gesture, and it any little bit will help, and it will arrest that decline in the number of public houses in Britain.
To the wall, yeah, that's right.
So, yes. So if that's the sort of thing he's going to do, yes, fine. I think that's a good sign. Nibbling at the edges, the bigger question, of course, of a new government in Britain is they've got to turn the page on where the great mistakes are in the economy, and where Britain has descended to becoming essentially a welfare state, where you paid more money not to work than you do if you get to work. And so that's got to be stopped. Now, whether he, because of his political inclinations and the pressure of his backbenchers, will be able to nibble away in a similar fashion at this horrendous and ever-increasing welfare bill is another thing to watch. But that's the only way that he can put the country back together and start spending money where it needs to be spent, on defense or on other projects which will enhance people's lives in Britain and put Britain back into well, not world class, but into some posture whereby it can live up to the level that we should expect it to have retained. I mean, it's never going to be a great nation again, and not that that's important. It's its values which are important, and how they can influence other people and other countries. And Britain is a very weak position at the moment because it doesn't seem to be able to look after itself.
No.
So this government has got a serious challenge after the mess that the Conservatives made of Britain over their 14 years in power, I forget.
Yeah.
Well, they were no longer Conservatives. They'd become something like Liberal Democrats or whatever, wishy-washy group, but no longer Conservatives, which has left the vacuum which people like Nigel Farage are seeking to occupy. But there's a chance here for Andy Burnham. He's got 3 years left. He can do a lot in 3 years, and if he can sit on the back bench, on his vociferous back benches, and keep them on side, and start to nibble away at these horrendous expenditures which are just bleeding Britain dry, as they say, the welfare payments and all that sort of nonsense, then there's a chance. There is a chance. He hopefully has got the skill, the political skills, and the personality to pull that off, as long as he isn't a prisoner of his own ideologies. And
what do you think about his appointment of the Miliband's, who are such dyed-in-the-wool lefties, and with once they've established a principle, they won't give up, even if it appears to be the wrong principle. How can that wound him, do you think?
Well, there are two ways of viewing Miliband, and one is, of course, he's a long-term buddy of Burnham. They came into this game together at about the same time, and they established a relationship, and their philosophies are not dissimilar. So there is an empathy, a very strong empathy between the two of them, and so he would be, and Miliband, of course, is a favorite of the backbenchers, and was a potential, of course, to take over from Starmer. So he can't ditch Miliband for all of those reasons, old friend and a key person, a key player in the socialist movement. But he is probably as the most dangerous man in politics at the moment. And looking on the negative side now, I don't think he's much use at all, and I think he'll make a frightfully bad foreign secretary, almost as bad as his brother, David Miliband, who, had the same position several years ago. in the Blair administration, I believe it was. So no, Miliband is a prisoner, a fanatical ideologist, I think, and it's just destroyed Britain's economy with this stupid net zero projects. So I think we're going to have a very weak foreign representation as long as he's in that position. But Burnham couldn't ditch him. It was a pillar of the current Labour structure. Therefore, he had to keep him on, had to find a position where he felt he could do least harm. Much more frightening is the fact that even though he was fanatic at the energy department, he's been replaced there by somebody who's even more extreme, this girl Farnborough. I mean, she even wants to reach net zero in 15 years, not the remaining 25 years, and it's even more dangerous. So there are going to be complications that we'll see and impact upon the economy and the management of Britain's finances over the next period, and meaning that Burnham has his hands full trying to juggle all of these influences, but if he's deep down trying to put Britain back on track, and he has an opportunity to do it, but he's got some very difficult decisions to make.
What of the new Chancellor? What do you make of him?
Who's that, sorry?
New Chancellor.
Oh, the new Chancellor. Well, he goes up in our estimation by the fact that when he was Minister of Defence, he had the guts and determination to resign because he felt the military were being deprived of the necessary financing to defend the nation. And so he goes up in our estimation. Now, whether he'll be a tame chancellor and simply fall in line with whatever number 10 tells him to do is another question. I hope not. I noticed that his second in command, Karn, who also resigned, the Armed Services Minister, has chosen not to come back into government until he feels that the proper funding for defence is re-established, and there's no sign of that happening as yet. So that will be one of the key points on which the Chancellor will be judged if he finds the funding to meet that obligation. And of course, the hint has been dropped in cabinet. I think the very, very first cabinet meeting, they talked about all government departments having to find economies. And maybe that's just the first signal that, yes, there's going to be economies come from this wasteful amount of money, ever increasing amount of money spent on welfare.
What sort of task do you think the government has in taming that particular giant of a spender?
It's going to be a tough haul for a left-wing government because a left-wing government is seen as being a very thoughtful government who cares about people, and more so than the wicked conservatives are supposed to be, all for the business people. I don't think that's true in any case. But so the very philosophy, left-wing philosophy, is decency, kindness, and helping people, and therefore it's going to be very difficult to take away part of the safety net, the so-called safety net. But when the safety net is become a woolly blanket on which people can simply just benefit from doing nothing, it's not serving its purpose anymore. But philosophically, it's going to be very difficult for a Labour Party, a left-wing party, to engage in the kinds of reform that are necessary. But that's that's a question of the political swing. If they don't, they'll be kicked out, and they'll be out for quite a long time if they ever recover again. And you'll get somebody in like Farage who will, or, and if not Farage, somebody even more to the right of Farage who will wield the axe, and there'll be a lot of serious. If not the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, will step in. We're not far away from that.
Yes.
we've had them move in once with the Labour government some years ago, so that could well happen again.
How do you think that Nigel is weathering the storm around his head about taking lots of money for himself?
Well, taking money for himself, he's painted the picture that is simply to produce protection for his party members, and which has hitherto been denied by the powers that be, the people who control that. So that is a very reasonable explanation as to why he accepted that money. I don't think it went into his own back pocket or anything like that. And of course, the whole thing is being blown up out of all proportion, because anything they can nail him with, they'll try, because he is a threat to their future. So it's but no, he'll pull through. I don't think people really care about that. They can see that it's a campaign to denigrate his standing, but
I think that Nigel has shown with this so-called scandal just how the established parties view him, how much of a threat he is, because they're really pulling out all the stops. It's incredible the amount of information that comes out. Much of it not believable.
Absolutely, and of course the battle is going to be fought in the future, as it has been recently, in the red wall seats, the so-called red wall seats, and whether they swing to. There's a few of them going over to the Greens. I mean, there's a bunch of nutcases if ever there was one. But so it's a question between whether Burnham can win back the red wall seats, and they're far from convinced. He did okay in the by-election to get himself into Parliament, through the strength of his own personality and the rest of it, which is admirable. That's a victory. It's a risk he took, and a gamble he took, and he pulled it off. But I think he's far from won over the so-called red wall seats, and they're going to stick with Farage, and again, all depending on what Burnham does in the next 6 months. Politics is moving faster and faster. Life is moving faster and faster. Change is moving faster and faster these days. And instead of, he's got 3 years left before he has to call an election. But I think the judgments will start coming in within 6 months from now.
Right. How does the rest of the world view what's happening in Britain, or do they care?
Well, they should care, because I think what's happening in the Middle East is still a critical factor. It's going to impact, of course, the cost of gas, the cost of fuel, of petroleum products, and I think finally Trump is getting his act together. He's realized you can't negotiate with these people, and he's going to tighten the screws a little bit by attacking civilian infrastructure, which theoretically is against the rules of war. But the rules of war, that's a bit of a joke. There are no rules in war. The only rule in war is not to lose. And once he starts to destroy the Iranian economy by isolating major towns, hitting bridges, hitting power plants, desalination plants, and things like this, which is, you can call that a crime, a human crime, if you will, but war is a human crime. Nobody seems to worry about Putin indiscriminately firing rockets into Kiev every night and killing people and destroying just anything that's in the way wherever the rocket lands. So why we should have one set of rules for one set of belligerents and not for the other, I don't know. Can you have rules in war, really?
I think not, Harry. As they say, history is always told by the victor.
Indeed.
There are a series of programs on television at the moment, not BBC, I hasten to add, which I don't think would do this sort of thing, but a number of programs about the last war in France, and it is pointing out in many ways that the Allies were guilty of as many atrocities as the Nazis were. But of course, we're always swept under the carpet.
Well, indeed, I mean, if Britain had lost, and Bomber Harris and people like that would have been in front of a war crimes trial in 5 minutes flat. I mean, Dresden, Hamburg, and where, literally tens of thousands of people were burned to death in one night with incendiary bombs, with intention being to break the public will. So that was a war against civilians. It wasn't a war against the Nazi the military regime. So no, I mean, war is brutal. War is what it is. War is, as von Clausewitz said, politics continued by other means. So no, I mean, the notion of having rules in war is a little bit far-fetched, and the bad guys, the so-called bad guys, are never going to abide by them anyway.
Now, rules in politics get a bit stretched, don't they? How's my favourite, Marie Le Pen?
Well, she's middle of the road. I mean, she's made herself fully acceptable to the French electorate. Her father, of course, was more extreme, Jean-Marie Le Pen, but he's gone now, and she's made the party, as I say, respectable, electable, and the current polls show that she's far and ahead going to be the winner. And she'll certainly get the most number of votes in the first round, because it's a two-round presidential election in France. And the second round, any of the people who look to be standing against her show she'd win against them fairly handily. Some more than against others, with a higher vote against Mélenchon and extremists like him. But even some of the more respectable middle of the roaders, she'd still come out ahead. So it pretty much looks like, unless there's any serious hitch along the way, that she will become the next president of France. But don't expect any drift to the right. I mean, she is more populist, and she's pulled the politics of what the old RN, which is now, and the FN, sorry, to the RN, and she's pulled it into the middle of the road. I think she'll probably govern in a very moderate fashion, and certainly with her young protege, Bardella, who will become her prime minister. His politics are not extreme right wing. They're the middle of the road.
What's happening in the rest of Europe? Anything significant?
Well, yes, I think the German economic miracle is on the rocks for a start. There is now wide talk about the flowers of industry like Volkswagen just going bust. I mean, it's the news. The economic news out of Germany is catastrophic, and Volkswagen, who invested too heavily in China and going electric and that sort of thing, it's not sure that they will even survive it. And many of the industries in Germany and the political initiatives that were taken to not wean themselves off Russian gas are now coming home to roost. So they're in desperate shape. I think you're going to get a major political change there in very short order. Mind you, the post-war constitution of Germany is designed to prevent any one particular power group getting extreme power, because they gave a lot of individual power to the Länder, what the divisions, the geographic and political divisions of France, and so that the idea is to prevent another Hitler happening. But they do have serious commercial problems to get over, and that if Germany in decline emboldens Russia, so it will have quite a serious effect on and of course the abandon with Trump abandoning Britain. What am I saying? Abandoning Europe, trying to disentangle himself from Europe, and until they start to pay their way in defence. I think the future in Europe is looking a little bit grim for the next few years. But Trump won't be around much longer. He's made a pretty much mess of things in his second term. He had some decent ideas in his first term, but he's proved himself to be a totally unreliable character, and then people don't want him as an ally anymore. If he quits NATO, it's probably best out of it. NATO would then finally begin to stand on its own 2 feet.
Yeah. What is the legacy in the States? What sort of government can we expect once Trump is gone?
Well, one would think that the heir apparent could be J.D. Vance, who is pretty much of an isolationist. And he wants to get out of Iran, he wants to get out of Europe, and really he's the flag carrier for the old Monroe Doctrine, isolationism, and so he would seem to be the heir apparent. But I think we're in for some surprises, because if Trump continues to screw it up as badly as he is, it could lead to resurgence of the Democratic Party, and therefore the Democratic star could come out, and the swing of the political pendulum could put the Democrats back in. So we wouldn't have a clear road to becoming inheriting the mantle. And then, of course, Marco Rubio, who's the Secretary of State, is a potential contender from the right as well. He's been keeping his nose clean. And J.D. Vance is cultivating his constituency, but it's not a guarantee that he'll automatically follow Trump. Yeah. I think Trump will have really wrecked the MAGA system through his inconsistencies and his vanity and his inability to make the right decisions in the second term. So I think it's an open day. There could be a resurgence. Newsom, the governor of California, is supposedly the front runner. He's pretty useless, but they could bring up another flag carrier between now and then. It's 2 years away? 2.5 years.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, in the Middle East, it's apart from throwing insults at one another, they are also lobbing missiles backwards and forwards again. What's happening there?
Well, there's a change. There's a change in the Middle East, I think. That's going to be a permanent change, and I think that will start to take shape as soon as Iran is beaten. If Iran is not defeated, Iran will go ahead, develop the nuclear bomb, and start to throw it around. It's as simple as that, and then it will be chaotic. But if Iran can be put back in line, then I think you'll see powers in the Middle East emerging that we don't see as yet, and powers that are not necessarily based on religion or ideologies. So the key to the future of the Middle East is to defeat Iran at all costs.
All right.
Change the regime, stop them getting the atomic weaponry. And,
do you think Trump appreciates that, or is he really involved so much in his own ego that it's what shall I do that makes me look good?
Well, I think he's beginning to understand it, and he's tightening the screws now, because the Americans like to win. They like to win wars. They like to, and they don't want to be conned into thinking that they've won when they've actually lost. They took them a long time to get over Vietnam, and which they lost, of course, hands down. And no, I think he will, in order to make sure that his legacy is not one of failure, he will throw in the packet and start to destroy the Iranian economy and pull the rug out from under the current regime.
Switching to the Far East, China, the India, and the other so-called Asian pirates.
Well, India, of course, is the emerging powerhouse of Asia. It's no question about it. They're the ultimate ones that will rival China, and they are slowly getting their act together and they're becoming quite a force to be reckoned with. China, of course, is still on the rise, but you can see the limit of the potential of the rise at the moment. And unless there's a major conflagration in that part of the world, based on or triggered by their attempt to recuperate, to recover Taiwan, I think the various powers will act in counterbalance to each other. Japan is still a force to be reckoned with, and Australia, believe it or not, is starting to exercise a little bit of hegemony over parts of the neighboring small countries and seas, and playing the game a little bit more subtly and better than China. As a reaction against Chinese influence in the South China Sea, Australia is starting to play a role. So one can be hopeful that that area will be contained, and instead of becoming too adventurous. It depends on how far China's ambitions go, and they've got a huge military, but it's a very highly unproven military. They've never fought a war, for all of the America's fond adventures, they've constantly been at war, and one way or another, and so their military is fine. Is much more finely tuned than is the Chinese military.
Harry, is the signpost that has been posted by the Chinese, and that is the return of Formosa, is that likely to be seen before we start to see a real decline in the power of China?
Well, it depends what weight Taiwan or Formosa, whichever you care to call it, will carry in terms of its industrial capacity, and particularly in chip making, in the electronics industry. And a lot of countries that were heavily reliant on Taiwan are developing their own internal chip making capabilities. And so as it becomes less critical, it becomes less worth risking a third world war to defend it. They're aware of that themselves, and they're arming as much as they can. But it's already doubtful whether America would go to war to defend Taiwan. A few years ago, they said they would, but I'm not sure they would anymore. And as it becomes less critical to the electronics industry, it's still very important. There's still a tremendous proportion of components that are made there, but it will lose its significance, and therefore its absorption by China will become less of a traumatic event.
Right, Harry. I may have missed out a significant chunk of the world, but we've gone through the key areas. Is there anything you see that we should be paying strict attention to that we haven't talked about?
Not really. I think the most interesting thing is where we're at the beginning, talking about Britain, and if it can use this opportunity, if the Labour government can use the opportunity to make the reforms necessary, it'll take a very courageous person to do it. But Andy Burnham has got a very brief window when he can do it. He's still got the first flush of success, and with the backing of virtually all of his party, unanimous, a coronation, as we've talked about. So if he's going to make any of these major changes, he's got to do them quickly, while he's still got the momentum to pull it off. I think that's the critical question of the future of Britain, both economically and as a moral or international influence and power.
Now, Harry, I can see something grey and wispy over your left-hand shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think something from the castle has come up to join you?
Oh well, no. My left-hand shoulder. It's a picture of me in the cavalry, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah.
I just wondered if one of the ghosts we've been talking about has got stirred enough from our chat.
Yeah. No. When I served as a young man, served in the household cavalry.
It's always a joy to have you on, to talk to you. Your very perceptive views of what's happening in the world. Let me say to our viewers, you pay attention to what Harry has to say. He wouldn't claim that he's right about everything, but he certainly brings a different point of view to those that we hear espoused on regular television, in regular newspapers, and from the regular sources such as the House of Commons. You'll be with us again next week, Harry?
I hope so. If I don't, what you got? Wrap your clogs, whatever. What's that expression? Yeah.
I keep on thinking about that, and then I think, nah, we're too irritate the world too much.
Yeah. Well, I should make sure I get a couple of beers in before the pub shuts.
Harry, see you next week, and
it's a pleasure.
A great deal of pleasure.
Okay. Bye. God bless. Okay. Bye.
And to everybody else, toodle bit.